did it, girls.
So can I have Carl and Dick come forward, please? They are board members of the library.
Good afternoon. Thanks for coming. My name's Carl Hendrick. I am on the Board of Trustees of the library. And when people ask me what's my earliest recollection of the library, it's right here in the children's room. I guess it was 1959. I started coming up here with my lifelong best friend, he's still my best friend, Jimmy John Butler. And we spent a lot of time here. We went through St. Mary's together in high school, so yes, I have fond memories of the children's room. So I'd like to read a proclamation honoring Henrietta R. Towne. Whereas the Port Jervis Free Library is forever grateful for the long-term service of Henrietta R. Towne as the director of the children's room at the Port Jervis Free Library. Whereas in that role, she developed programming to encourage children to use the library, including the summer reading programs and story hours. Henny ensured that the children's room had a wide variety of topics and worked to acquire the needed resources to help children achieve their goals. Additionally, she ordered all the books for the children's room, sought to help teachers reach their students, as well as parents who were homeschooling. Whereas Henrietta was known for being a leader who had high standards that made people want to do well and be better. She was willing to listen to others' ideas, make changes, and was a driving force in forming the Free Library Employees Association prior to her retirement in 2009. This group continues to be an important part of the Port Jervis Free Library. Whereas Henrietta was an active member of the Drew United Methodist Church for more than 40 years and organized many events with the Methodist women to help raise money to serve the community. Whereas we come together in celebration of her life and the impact she had on our library community, now therefore be it resolved that the Port Jervis Free Library Board of Trustees proclaims March 25th, 2023 as Henrietta R. Towne Day, with the dedication and renaming of the Henrietta R. Towne Children's Room in honor of all she did to make our library and community so much better. Thank you. Thank you.
I just want to say a few words because I did know Henrietta. Actually spent Sunday mornings with her at Drew Methodist Church. And she's a great mother also to her 3 children who are here today. Just mentioned to Lori, I said, my goodness, this goes back years. I had Lori in my youth group at the Drew Church.
More than 50
We won't
years.
say way back when, but it was a few years ago.
It really was way back.
And sad to say, I had, and Lori will attest this, I had about 45 kids every Sunday night at the Drew House, it was called that. We would do our business meeting and our prayer service, and then we would have games and so forth. We just had a great time with the youth that came. And I remember them very much, and I remember their parents, Jim and Henrietta Towne. They were just great people in this community, and it's so thankful that we're able to dedicate this room where she spent a lot of hours. And before this, she was downstairs, as everybody starts downstairs, right, Barbara Cassidy? And my mother-in-law worked with her, and Elsie Pantley and Ella Harding, and some of these older women. And I believe what Lori said, when Ella and Elsie retired, is when Henrietta moved upstairs. And yes, the rest is history. She touched so many children, and that was the way she was, just a happy, bubbly person with energy, that wanted to help people, and that's why I'm proud to be on the board at the time that we're dedicating this space to Henrietta Towne Library, or children's room. So anyway, I'm glad you're all here, and we can celebrate together. Thank you.
Would anyone like to come up and share some stories about Henrietta? Like I said, I didn't know her, so I need to get to know her because I can feel her in this room. And I need to hear more about her.
Thank you, Mother. Yeah, we have a button.
Please,
Good.
please.
Yeah, I don't know where to put it.
Hello all. My name's Pete Marchetto. My dad's name is also Pete Marchetto. Just recently moved back to the area about a year ago, and I used to live in West End. And one day when I was 4.5 years old, I decided to tell my parents it was my destiny to become a scientist. And their reaction to that was not what a lot of parents would do. A lot of parents would laugh it off. Instead, they decided, you know what? If there's something you don't know, we're going to take you to the library and figure it out. And that's where Henrietta came in. Week after week, I'd come in with my questions, and she'd direct me to the books. And years later, I'd moved down to New Jersey. I was only here through 1992. I was, I think, 15 or 16 years old, and this package comes in the mail. There's a little note inside. It's the Golden Book of Chemistry, which I had out more times than I had back in. It was covered in packing tape, and the note simply says, "We finally retired this book. We probably should have retired it sooner because it teaches kids how to make chlorine gas." So from a liability perspective, maybe that was a little bit remiss, but immediately upon the retiring of the book from the shelf and de-shelving, she thought, I know who needs this. I know who's going to take this. And one day, when I was an assistant professor at the University of Minnesota, after having gotten a PhD at Cornell, there it is on my bookcase, just sitting there, waiting for me to throw it at the students and say, listen, you should have learned this back when you were tiny. I mean, golden books were the ones who were teaching this. Aside from all the times that I remember both Jim and Henrietta over at Drew, it was always a matter of she was the gateway to knowledge for all of us kids who came in here. She was the storyteller. And most of all, I remember when the desk was over there in that corner, getting my hand stamped on my way out, and also just getting my library card stamped back in the day. And long story short, without Henrietta, I also wouldn't have been exposed to the rest of the library. When I had a question that couldn't be covered by something up here, or any of us kids had a question, and this was back late 80s, early 90s, she would not be afraid to bring us downstairs to the reference room, to bring us to the adult nonfiction section, and get us out of our normal little children's library comfort zone, and show us there's more knowledge here than just what you're supposed to be able to see in the kids' library. So, a testament to Mrs. Towne and the whole library community. Thank you very much.
Would anyone else like to come forward and share a story about Henrietta? Please. Please. The first person has gone, so it's easy.
I tried to break the ice a little bit.
Hello, everyone. This is going to be very short. I was first employed here and set up here to open the library. And I'm getting things done. The desk was over there at the time. And I did something and Henrietta said, oh, you did that wrong. And I said, oh, I'm so sorry. How do I do it? And after that, I wasn't afraid of her
Well, I never worked with Henrietta here at the library. I was here for But when I used to bring my daughter Kate to the library, she loved Mrs. Towne. That is the perfect picture you have here of Henrietta with her box of stamps. Because the children just, they weren't afraid of her that I know of. I don't know any children that were afraid of her. They were afraid of some of the other ladies who were, who were a little more strict, maybe they had to be. But I just remember my daughter Kate loved her. And my son Jack, who probably hasn't cracked a book since he got out of high school because he's on the internet. But anyway, but the kids, they loved her. She was mom to everybody. She was huggable. And to go back to Drew Church, which maybe a lot of you have not been to Drew Church, but she and Jim were like the mayor and his wife of the church. When we first started going there back in, probably 1985 or 86, it's like they would latch onto you and welcome you, and you never felt, geez, I feel a little alone here. You were latched onto and welcomed, and what a great family. I just wonderful people, and I'm so happy to be here. That's a perfect picture, and to remember Henrietta. What a dear lady. Thanks, Sharon.
Please do.
Not really sure what I'm going to say. I have to say something about my friend Henrietta. I'm Elaine Williams, and when I moved to this area, my children were very young, and I was very isolated. It was the winter, and although this is a lovely community, when you first come here, it seems like everybody already knows everything. So I can't overstate, and I'm not going to try to even describe what a difference that Mrs. Towne and all the librarians in the children's library. I don't want to take anything away from them. They were all very welcoming to me, and the fact that Mrs. Towne was also at my church, it just made it a lot more tolerable for me to be in a new place and to be starting over, not with little kids, and we came to Story Hour religiously, and I hear a lot of people, they say how wonderful Mrs. Towne was, and it is true, and how sweet she was, and I'm even telling you how welcoming she was. But I liked Mrs. Towne's tough side. I really did, and she and I had an understanding. We had a very special understanding, and all it took was a look. She knew that she entertained me, and she knew that I got her. And for example, one time it was set up differently. There was a stage here, and there were some computers here, and there were some rowdy teenagers, and they had their little siblings with them that they were supposed to be babysitting, and they weren't watching them. Hey, what is? And then, so they were all wild, running around, and everybody was getting bent out of shape over it. And Mrs. Towne said, I like the teenagers to come and the kids, but they should be watching them. So I said, let them know, Mrs. Towne. And she leaned up on the front of the desk like she did when she had something to say, and she let them have it. So a couple of minutes later, she goes like this to me, Elaine, come here. So because I didn't have a good view. So I came over to the desk and she said, can I clear a room? I appreciated that. So to the extent that I have two little more things. We were sitting over here and the mothers were we were all having a nice conversation, and these mothers got their cell phones out. I'm like, you're not allowed to get your cell phone out. We have to interact. So they're like, I just have to. I said, don't make me tell Mrs. Towne. So I started laughing, so they thought I was kidding. And then my girlfriend Michelle said, she's not kidding, she loves telling Mrs. Towne. So I said, Mrs. Towne. Yeah. There's some mothers over here, and she knew, we got each other, and she said, mothers! Ooh. Anyway, and then the last one was one time on Palm Sunday. She had her little short haircut, and I was about 2 rows behind her, and we had the palms. And I kept going like that. And I know everybody's heard this story, but it's just iconic for me. And she kept going through the whole service. And then finally, as we were leaving, the music was playing. It was a lovely service. This is Towne. And she and her husband looked over, and I went. And she said, oh, you. And also, my husband and I, because we was transplants and my husband worked all the time, so she bought us tickets to the Valentine's Day dance when she heard we weren't gonna go. And we went to the Valentine's Day dance, and that meant so, I can't overstate the difference that Mrs. Towne and her husband, who I sat with at coffee hour a lot, you know, they made a big difference in our lives here in Port Jervis. And they were very welcoming, and it's a lovely community, but it's very close. So she made a really big difference in my life. And there were others at church and the library also, but we're focusing on Mrs. Towne. So she was just an icon of Port Jervis to me, really iconic. Okay, thank you.
I think outside for children here, I may be the one person in here who's known her the longest. No? No?
Family.
Okay, I've known her, okay. Family doesn't count though.
No.
I'm not family. I've known her for about 50 years. Lisa and I met first grade, hit it off. So I spent a lot of time in Mrs. Towne's house and here. And I know the tough side. I've been the but that was in her house too. So. I spent a lot of time up here, lots of time, almost every day sometimes. And I would have a new obsession. One month it would be horses, and every book on horses she would make sure that I got a hold of. And for a while it was sharks, and the same thing, and dinosaurs, it was the same thing. Just, I've got a lot of memories tied up here, like I said, with the desk in the wrong spot. But I loved her. She was an awesome person. I'd go to her house and she'd treat me just like the kids, and would include yelling at me. That's it. My name is Linda. It was Brian Miller now, but yeah. That's it. That's all I got.
I know there's some more stories here.
I'm terrible at public speaking, but I'm her only son, and the youngest one, the youngest of the three of her children. I'm Georgetown, and if you all knew, my dad's name was Jamestown. You know, it's a place. It's kind of funny, and they thought, like they gave all the girls that they had, they wanted a name with L, and then if I was going to be a girl, they said I would be Lonnie, but then I was a boy, and they were like, oh, well, you have to make it a. So, yeah, I did, yeah. So, yeah, I had if you're all here because you remember my mom, and my mom was the sweetest person, but she definitely had a tough side, but it wasn't like, like she wasn't like the kind of a slap you, which I'm a really spoiled boy, and she was wonderful. There were some people reminding me that she always called her Georgie, and I kind of remembered that too, but but that's pretty much like what she referred to me as to other people, so that was kind of cute. But yeah, Port Jervis was such a wonderful place to grow up. If any of you didn't realize, we lived in a house, Mom could cut through.
The little alleyway, yes, student houses.
We were friends with the woman whose property, her name was Ann Oswick, and we would just pass, Mom would just go home for lunch, so she was really, even though people would be like, oh, your parents leave you alone, but they weren't really leaving us alone. Mom was right there 2 buildings down, so it was just pretty wonderful to be able to have such protection, and it was also, it's so nice that so many people are here from the church, because that was kind of part of our home too, you know, like with that, we were Methodists, and that building was just down the block the other way, and we went to Sullivan Avenue School, and that was walking distance. So it was like this little neighborhood was really just such a nice place to grow up. You know, we had a little dog, we let it out in the backyard to kind of run around, and it wasn't until like we, you know, went to the middle school and high school that we had to really kind of be driven there, you know, like, but we probably could have walked it. It wasn't that far, but you know, pretty much I went to the city right after, I got accepted to an art school, and I was really interested in just learning more about like what that was about. And you know, I got rent stabilization in the East Village way back then, and I'm really still there. And you know, Port Jervis is unique among places around here that you actually can still take the train to the city from here. But people don't kind of realize that. But if you take the train, the PATH train from Hoboken, this is the last stop, and I could totally just walk up the hill and I'm home without using a car. So that's if I wanted to do that, but I kind of made New York my home. But it was pretty just wonderful, just kind of knowing that my family was here anytime I wanted their support or their love, and it was nice. And hearing everybody's stories about it's almost like she was like, because you know, I grew up taking it for granted that doesn't every mother read to their kids, you know, like apparently not, but a lot of parents could, you know, like they were busy, they were working, whatever, they could drop their kids off here and she'd read a book. So the story hour really is kind of like part of the community with people helping. You know, it takes a village to raise people. Like I imagine, I don't have any kids, but yeah, I imagine it's a tough job. So, but I'm glad both my sisters are here, and we've become since she passed away. We were always close, but I feel like we're closer. We're getting closer now. We've got a group text going on, and it's very lively. Anyway, I wanted to just, I remember a lot of you by face and not as much by name, because it really was like over 35 years ago that I was here regularly. But it's not me being stuck up, it's just me being old. Full disclosure, I'm old. Anyway, thank you and love you all for doing this.
Would anyone like to go next?
If there's a nobody up.
Oh, you should go.
You should go. Come on up. Come on, Mary.
I hope you can hear me okay. I'm Lori, I'm Henrietta's oldest, and yes, thank you, Carl, for, yes, I remember Carl from high school, and it's nice that you're on the board. There were a couple of people that I contacted on Facebook, but as I just came across this card from Rhonda. And it was I hope she doesn't get mad at me for reading this, but she really summed up my mother beautifully. She was saying, my deepest condolences on the loss of your mom. Working with Henrietta and getting to know her was a pleasure. She was a role model, a mentor, a second mother, and believe me, I felt like Rhonda was family. You know, there's 12 years between Lisa and myself, and 13. So when I moved here, people thought George and Lisa were my kids.
called her the unthinkable. Because she had such a panic. She didn't get panicked. But once she made up her mind that, this was something that we needed to do, she was, you really couldn't stop her, and her courage in fighting leukemia. My mom, hi, how are you? And she had accumulated so much sick time at the library that they changed the rule that you had to use your sick time. Because she was 3 months in an experimental program for leukemia at Westchester, and the library was paying her whole vacation time. She was still on salary and getting a paycheck every time the checks were cut. So that stopped. Her willingness to learn. She was always learning, and she got magazines, for United Methodist Women. She would look for programming, and she also attended, and she would take anybody that the library would let her take to go to classes at the Ramapo Catskill Library System. And that's how she learned, She would get a lot of great ideas from other libraries, and she could speak with I'm having a problem with this, or want to do that, or, so she took computer classes, and through the RCLS system, and of course she dragged Rhonda and whoever she could get to go with her, and her compassion and empathy for others. I mean, my mother truly loved this community. In 1981, when we had the flood, I wasn't living at home, and I managed to get home, and I was like, where the heck is she? And I look across the street in the dark, and she's got lights on in the kitchen at the church. I go across the street, I ring the doorbell, and she says, good, you're here, you'll make coffee. I was tall enough to fill a big pot. And yes, and that was part of my mother too. Being behind a desk, I moved here at 15 from a school with 30 kids in a grade. And I was like, all of a sudden, there are 300 approximately per grade. And I was like, now what do I do? And she was like, well, you make yourself useful, And she says, why do you think? She says, every time your father and I moved, I joined the United Methodist Women, and I got out in the community and worked in the community. And she was always pushing to get out, She taught me that, but she always said, I need the church window for being the coffee hour lady. I still need a crutch. I really do. It's really hard for me to be up, but I know so many people who are here, and I'm grateful. So I just loved that I got that note because Rhonda summed up my mother, and there were some people that Facebook messaged me that they would have loved to have been here, and one person was a guy that I had gone to school with, and he literally retrained, and my mother would order in whatever he was trying to learn, and she would let him know when he could go into the children's video and watch videos and retrain. And now, you know, he's the same age as me. We're both retired, and he's out doing community service in New York, where, you know, he's still an active part of his community. And he says, your mother was a saint. You know, he said so many nice things, you know, about Mom that, you know, but she truly, when people came in this community, you know, when they were looking for something, she was always trying to help people who were homeschooled. And she was looking in the paper, she would look for any kind of opportunity that she could find to, what can I use in the life? She knew she had a vehicle. She knew that she felt she had a responsibility. And she used it, you know? It, you know, she was like, you know, she was always looking to do something. And she was very good at volunteering us too. And, you know, but it was not, it was a labor, it was just my mother, you know? And, you know, this past year without her is still a tremendous loss, you know? You know, and I want to give any other people a chance to speak. I see people, so I don't want to take up all this time, but I'm starting to get emotional.
Would anyone else like to share some memories they have of Henrietta? Please?
I have a couple actually, but one in particular. My name is Patty Gessner, and she was an extremely important part of my family's life. But the story I want to tell you about is, it's actually kind of funny. It's a bit of a criticism of myself, but kids are getting into computers. Everybody had computers and all that, and we didn't. We didn't have that. And so the library was where they would have to come to do what they had to do. So one time, my daughter Katie had to do a project on Ferdinand Magellan. So we come to the library, and I was going to go shopping, but I thought, well, I'll come in and I'll read. And so she was back there, and she got into something. I have no idea what it was, but up came these columns on the page. I don't even know what that means because I don't do computer stuff. But up came these columns, and they weren't very nice. That's all I'm going to tell you about it. And I'm like looking at it, and I'm saying, what did you do? What did you do? And I'm hitting the buttons, and Kate says, Mrs. Towne, and she got the help that she needed. She definitely wasn't going to get it from me. And then I did go to church with Mr. and Mrs. Towne both, and she was truly unstoppable. What Lori said is absolutely true. If she had a thought that she felt was good or important, there was no stopping her. But she was so much fun and so kind and just a truly amazing woman.
Come on, there's got to be some more people that want to share some memories. Please, come forward.
For the young lady who thought she knew her wrong. I tell you, I know her even longer. Because I've been around for quite a while. First time I met Henrietta was in church and Sunday school with my kids. And then, of course, the library. I was new to the community. I lived in Cutterback Hill, which is in the middle of nowhere. However, the kids always very gracious. When I was a historian, she did break the rules. There's a room back here, which is locked. No one's allowed in there. She got me in there. I needed to do some research, and I didn't know what to do. So I said, Henrietta, do you have any idea how I can make an appointment to get in that room? She says, just a minute. And within 5 minutes, we were in there. And she said, she swore me to secrecy. And she said, this is, we're not supposed to be here. And I said, I'm going to tell. If you don't tell, then I don't know whether she did or not. But she was a lovely lady. And she was always helpful and kind. And I did miss her.
Amen.
I think the statute of limitations has expired.
Good job, no.
I started here when I was 12. He brought me down to volunteer. And then Mrs. T hired me when I was 14, and then I could get my working papers. I continued to work here part-time until I was 30-something. She was very kind, but she did have her side. She made me cry one time. I can't remember what, some teenage, I did the book song or something. She took me in the back staff room, and that woman made me cry. Oh my God, I was so scared. But she and Indy called your dad Indiana Jim because that hat. She and Indy were just the kindest people in my first apartment. They made sure I had Christmas decorations for my first Christmas. I still use that Christmas tree skirt every single year. She put up with so much teenage shenanigans. I have been in every part of this library. She snuck me the attic key. We go through here and up into the attic. I've been up in there. There's a dead cat skeleton up there. Down into the basement. I've been, it's quiet. You do things at 9 o'clock at night when the library. Probably shouldn't be telling the new director. I don't work here anymore. But she's kind, generous person. Saw me through my baby showers, through my marriage, prom, had my prom pictures taken here, all sorts of things, and just lovely, lovely person. And I'm a librarian today. She kind of saw us through all the Miss Hannah and Indy very, very much. Good person.
Anyone else like to? Try not to talk.
Wow, there's a lot back here. Well, thank you guys. I'm Lisa Hawksworth from Middle Child. And, have fond memories of this room from the time Ella Harding was here, and she was my children's librarian, and totally missed that stage. And one of the things that I will always be grateful for is that I was able to bring my own girls here, and they have the most fond memories of this library. I mean, they're like, oh, are we gonna go to Grandma's library? And it was, and I'm sure it continues to be this magical place. And it was magical for me as a child. It was magical for my kids, and I know that you guys are carrying on that legacy that she really wanted to create for kids, and a haven for parents and a resource for people, because she does love this community, and she was sad to leave. She left Port Jervis, and she came down to Virginia to help me take care of my kids. And my father was getting a little Alzheimer, and she needed help with him. So it was good that they came down, but it was painful leaving this community because she loved it here, and but she loved the weather in Virginia more. And up until the end, she was smiling, she was feisty. associated with this library, True Church. She really loved that community and was a lifelong Methodist woman and was very proud of that. So thank you all for coming out today and honoring her and making this so special for her family and for this community. Thank you.
Oh, okay, I'm not good at public speaking, and I'm already been crying through this whole thing, so. We moved here in '82, and I started coming to the library in about '85. I've known him all that time. And when I first came here, she was Mrs. Towne. As I got to know her a little better, she was Mrs. T. It wasn't until I started working here, and I've been here a long time, before I felt comfortable calling her Henrietta, because she was the boss. But at the same time, she was mother hen to everybody. She really loved the community, she loved the children, she loved us all. She called the workers up here her girls. It was a family. One year, the theme for summer reading was Get a Clue. So I devised this thing where I had 4th, 5th, and 6th grade students for the summer reading program, and we were training to be spies. So they had a job of interviewing the staff without it looking like an interview to find out what staff person was which spy, and they all had code names. And the things I found out about my coworkers was phenomenal. It was stuff that obviously it had to be a hidden talent or interest, otherwise you would know immediately which spy was who. Henrietta wasn't much stronger than I am, maybe the same height. She played basketball. I was amazed. She loved poetry. I think St. Patrick's Day was her favorite holiday. So no one could guess that she was a spy that played basketball. It was wonderful. Back to what Elaine said, how she really loved everybody, took you in. Before I started working here, I brought my oldest daughter to story time. I lived out in Cutbackville like Mrs. Shop, no close neighbors. My family was down in New Jersey. I was here alone, my first baby. My husband was working. Mrs. Towne was my lifeline. I talked to her all the time. I don't care if my kids went to story hour or not. I was here for Mrs. Towne. and we really got to know each other. She got to know everybody in the community. She had a way of talking to people that she knew everybody's secret. They would open up to her. She knew my life story. By the time my oldest was in high school, there was a possibility that my husband would have to relocate to California. I didn't want to go, but that's where his job was headed. We talked. My oldest was in, I think, 10th grade. I felt really bad about having to dislocate her in the middle of high school. Long story short, we didn't move, thank God. But while it was still a consideration, Henrietta actually made the offer that my daughter could stay with her and finish out high school with her. What person would do that? I don't know anybody that would have taken in a child for 2 years, a teenager, and see them through high school, which would have been learning to drive, prom, the whole 9 yards, because she was only like just turned 16 when we were talking about this. So we didn't move. Jen stayed with me, but I was deeply touched by that offer. And actually spoke to who Henrietta was. She would do anything for you. And I'm touched to have known her.
Anyone else like to share any stories, any memories? Nothing, no one? Okay. There is going to be music, at 2 o'clock, I believe they're coming, so we're going to, we have some refreshments. I'm gonna take a cake back and cut it up to share. Before I do that, if anybody would like to take some pictures of it or anything like that, or if anyone has any more stories to share, any more experiences or memories that they'd like to share with us. Or should I pass the tissues around?
Evelyn, could you read the plaque?
Of course, yeah.
Thanks.
Yes. In recognition of her compassion and dedication to children and adults throughout the years, Port Jervis Free Library Children's Room is now the Henrietta Towne Children's Room, March 2023. Now, I was talking with Connie and the other staff that work up here. We thought possibly we'd like to keep it somewhere where people can see it, but maybe keep their hands off of it. Above the copier is most likely where it's going to go. We just need to move the certificate of occupancy someplace where is compliant. So that is probably where this will be, and our banner will probably decide that within the next day or two of where that's going to be. Any other memories? Because I know the staff have told me so many beautiful things that I just thought you have to share that with everyone that comes. Yes, Bertie, I'm looking at you.
No, okay. I don't cry.
We have tissues.
I'm sorry. Bertie, I've been crying the whole time, so don't worry.
Children's room. When I started there was another, there was my coworker Sharon, and there was Henrietta and Rhonda. So Henrietta decided to pair Sharon and I together. And we were like, okay, what is that going to do? So wonderful, Sharon and I have developed a wonderful friendship over the years. But Henrietta had a plan. Aha, I've got these two girls. And before you know it, it was like, girls, come over here. We had to sit here to learn how to shelf read, do that. She knew I was handy. I sewed, did some things. She's like, oh, you girls, Bertie, what do you think of that bathroom? Maybe if we have a little curtain. Why don't you girls go to Walmart, pick up some material, we'll make a curtain for the back. Then it was like, we were looking at the cabinet in the bathroom. So then Sharon and I decided to paint it, sponge paint it. We went to Walmart, got paint, got stencils. So it got to be a thing where when I would come to work, we would count at least to 5, waiting for Henrietta to say, now girls, or Bertie, what do you think? Or I don't have a screwdriver. I was thinking, and I mean, we've done things. Sharon and I took the door off the story room one time. We took the door. So she always had a plan for us. And it got to be where sometimes Jimmy would come over, her husband, and he and I and Sharon, we would all work together. So that was just a great experience for us. And we just loved her. To know Henrietta was to love her. But to me, she was the epitome of grace and humility. Thank you.
Anyone else like to share any memories or experiences?
Can I share a really quick one? Since I have to run my phone.
Please, take your time.
Hi, I worked with Henrietta for 1 million years. And this is my quick and funny Henrietta story. So when I first started working here, she was training me to take the corners of the books and the spines of the books and all that stuff. And I was so afraid of disappointing her, because she would say how expensive the book tape was. Book tape is so expensive that if I made a mistake, I would cut it off and then take it home and throw it away.
able to do a newsletter. And I was in the library and I was looking at the beautiful newsletters. And I was like, who's doing that? And they said, Star. So thank you, because she would have been so excited to, and I was like, why didn't I see this before she passed? Because I should have sent it down to her, because she would have been ecstatic. But I'm looking at the John Newton Howard pictures. John Newton Howard, I don't know if people know who John Newton Howard was to Port Jervis. But his widow was trying to get his paintings. I just recently heard a story, and I wish I had paid better attention. But the widow was disappointed because nobody wanted his paintings. But he had donated. Now there was another painting with kids looking at toys.
Over there.
There.
Oh, that one.
Thank you. Okay. So we have two of his paintings. And I believe that's John Newton Howard. Right?
Probably, yeah.
And so we are really blessed. So somebody came in the library one time, and you wouldn't think that for as little as my mother was, that she had moxie, you know, or whatever. But she stopped a theft of, I believe that.
It was that one.
And-
I was here that night.
Thank you. So you could tell the story better than me.
No, go ahead. I just remembered.
And the other thing that she was extremely proud of were those puppets that were donated. Was it Mr. Patini who made them?
You made one.
Thank you. And I mean, these are really a treasure, you know? There are so many things that belong to this library that are really valuable and a treasure. And she was so frustrated with me in my childhood because I didn't have the interest in being a puppeteer. She really wanted me to do something with puppets. And then once she got to work, she could never get anybody to really do puppets. And, she did, she shot for the moon, she tried, but I'm so glad that we have the puppets here, because we have so many, the people are really the treasure, but thank you,
Anyone else? One more.
Not a memory, but, Lori, you reminded me, a couple of people, when Hen passed last year, sent money in her honor to the library. And I was thinking that we might use that money to buy a puppet theater, because I knew she did like puppets. So, it's in the works.
I remember you telling me that she enjoyed puppets. I didn't know
I
the story
forgot.
behind it, so thank you. Any other memories? Anyone else? Come on.
Where band starts.
Okay, I can remember my first week here with Henrietta, and she literally sat right next to me to train me for an entire week. And I went home and I said to my husband, I think I made a big mistake because this is not for me. Talk about the tape, like Stacy was talking about, you had to cut that tape perfect because there wasn't a lot of money. And it had to be cut perfect, and the date due cards, which had to be stamped, right on the line, and I'm there, we have story time, and I'm trying to stamp these cards, I'm like, oh my God. I was like a nervous wreck that week. But then I've been here 20-some years, and literally having worked with Henrietta was just a blessing for me. She was the most wonderful person to work with. She was amazing. And I can remember her, 6 o'clock would come, and if a child was here and was doing a report, and it was once we had computers, she would stay, and it meant nothing to her. It was just what she did. And Jimmy would always come to get her every day for lunch, every day at 6 o'clock. And he would just come in, and he would pick a book off the shelf, sit down and read, not say a word, until Henny was all done working with whoever she was working with. And that's the kind of person that she was. And the two of them together were absolutely amazing. As they would leave here, I would oftentimes watch out the window at 1 o'clock, them walking through the backyard to get home. And that was my memories. There's so many memories of her, and they're all wonderful, except the first week.
Okay, so the musicians are gonna start setting up, and looks like maybe nobody else wants to come forward to share any stories, so I'm just gonna maybe encourage people to share with each other. I know public speaking is terrifying. I don't like it, and here I am talking in front of a crowd of people that I don't know. But please share memories with each other. We're gonna have refreshments in about 10-15 minutes, and enjoy the music when it starts.